Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news, so you stay with us. And we begin in the Caribbean because Tropical Storm Dorian passed very near Barbados. Tropical storm conditions will be affecting portions of the Windward Islands through Tuesday morning. Meanwhile, the government of St. Lucia has discontinued the hurricane watch for St. Lucia, but are on tropical storm alert. A tropical storm alert is in effect for Barbados, as we were saying, St. Lucia, Martinique, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. Also, tropical storm watch is in effect for Dominica, Grenada and Dependencies, Saba and San Eustatius, and Puerto Rico. Dorian is expected to produce total rain accumulations of 3 to 8 inches in the Windward Islands from Martinique south to St. Vincent, including Barbados. Isolated maximum totals of 10 inches are possible across the northern Windward Islands. Rainfall totals of 1 to 3 inches are expected from the Grenadines, south to Grenada and across Dominica. Rainfall totals of 2 to 4 inches with maximum totals of 6 inches are possible across Puerto Rico and San Juan. And as we were saying, St. Lucia is no longer under hurricane alert, but they continue on tropical storm alert. And Prime Minister Alan Chastanet urged St. Lucians to prepare themselves for tropical storm Dorian. And this is what he said this Monday afternoon.
We just concluded a NEMAC meeting at 1 o'clock today. The update from the Met Office is that the storm Dorian is now going to be at least a Category 1 hurricane when it hits St. Lucia at 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's on Tuesday morning. And again, everybody has been asked to be in their homes by 6 p.m. today and to prepare yourselves. As a result of that, we have announced that we're going to officially close the country as of 6 p.m. today. So that means that everyone should be home, all businesses should be closed by 6 p.m. Today. With us were representatives of the Chamber of Commerce and also of the public sector. So the only officials that will be out after 6 p.m. would be that of essential services. I'm asking all St. Lucians to adhere to the notices given only by NEMO. So this is an official notice by NEMO that we're shutting down the country as of 6 p.m. People will be allowed to go back out once an all-clear notice has been given by NEMO. I want to repeat that there is no such thing as a partial clearance. It can only be an official all-clear, and the only entity that can issue that is NEMO. In order to facilitate the public, we do have an app, cap.cap, which is a free download, which will give you official updates from NEMO.
And airlines, Lion and Caribbean Airlines, have both been forced to cancel numerous flights due to Tropical Storm Dorian. All flights leaving or arriving to Barbados, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines have been cancelled, and passengers will be allowed to rebook between August 25th to August 28th with all change fees and fare differences waived within the specific booking period. And now we move to other informations because, as you remember, we are entering almost the 22nd day of wildfires in the Amazonian region. And specifically, thousands of fires, as we were saying, the Amazonian rainforests have now been raging for more than 20 days, with those ravaging the Brazilian Amazon showing no signs of slowing down. The slow response by the Brazilian government has been condemned internationally. Our correspondent Brian Muir moved to the state of Rondônia, where the mass fires, devastating fires, have been taking place, and is closer to the Amazonian region. And this is the following report he sent us after being there, walking on the streets and being able to talk to people. He has the the words that people are saying and how they are reacting. Welcome, Brian. Please tell us.
I'm in Porto Velho, the capital of the Brazilian state of Rondônia, where smoke has completely engulfed the city. This morning when I woke up, I couldn't even see the Madeira River 200 meters from my hotel. It rained a little bit last night, but it wasn't enough to put out the fires, and it seems as even though the Air Force is here and everything, they're still getting worse. Now, Rondônia is a state that was completely taken over by ranchers and soy farmers over the course of the last 30 years. The political apparatus is completely dominated by the powerful ruralista bloc of lobbyists. And the only land that's left that still has virgin rainforest in the state, basically, are on these indigenous reservations. And that's why they're burning right now. I was speaking with a liberation theology priest who's been working with indigenous groups in the region for 40 years. And he told me that there's a reservation near Porto Velho where the ranchers have come in and they've just divided up the land among themselves. There's about 500 of them, and they're just burning everything down. Now, there's two tribes that lived deep in the jungle on this reservation that had almost no contact with outsiders. They were still living in their traditional ways. And he tells me that for the last 2 months, nobody's seen them, and he's worried that the ranchers have just killed them all.
Thank you, Brian. And as you may remember, President Jair Bolsonaro just last week said that he might consider sending military forces to the Amazonian state in order to fight these wildfires. And after our correspondent, Brian Muir, moved to the Rondônia state, as we were saying, he's there. He went talking with the people of the Rondônia region. And this is the story he's sharing with us, how they are reacting and how they are fighting these wildfires. Let's see it.
The Brazilian Air Force has come into Rondônia to try to put out fires this weekend, but thousands of them are still raging out of control. According to the fire department, in the 6 counties where the most fires are taking place, the number has risen by 193% this year. Local journalist Luciana Oliveira snuck into an indigenous reservation this Sunday to see what was happening for herself.
It's hard to breathe. It's really hot, but the worst thing is seeing it.
After far-right President Jair Bolsonaro gutted the environmental agencies, big ranchers moved in and are parceling out land inside indigenous reservations and burning it down.
We warned everyone that this was going to happen. We say that President Bolsonaro's rhetoric would pull a mental trigger. He gave the order when he relativized the issue of environmental crimes, when he discredited the work of environmental protection agencies, when he ridiculed the fines, when he gave an order, he said, do it.
It doesn't appear that Rondônia's governor, a former military police colonel from Bolsonaro's PSL party, is giving any signs that he will punish the illegal ranchers.
Watching the forest burn, hearing the branches cracking from the fire and the soil turning black is terrifying.
Bolsonaro recently announced that he'll pardon more than $4 billion in income tax for the big ranchers and farmers who have a major influence on his government. Brian Muir, Telesur, Porto Velho.
Impressive, these wildfires. And we continue talking about these fires in the Amazonian region because one of the countries affected also is Paraguay, and they have restarted in the Amazon region not long after to combat these wildfires, not long after authorities managed to put out a number of them. The president also traveled to Bahia Negra in order to oversee firefighting efforts. Our correspondent, Osvaldo Sayas, have also moved there in order to share with us also how the government is reacting to fight these wildfires, and this is what he saw, and this is his report from this Bahia Negra. Welcome, Osvaldo. Please tell us.
Saludos desde Bahía Negra.
A government delegation led by President Mario Abdo Benitez arrived in Bahia Negra, where Paraguay's wetlands are located. The president announced the country will receive aid from the European Union, which offered planes that should arrive in the next few days. Firefighters also arrived in the early hours and traveled to the Tres Gigantes reservation, where fires continue to rage. The Minister for National Emergencies, Joaquin Ruano, announced that the government will use all the tools at its disposal to put out the fires. He also said he spoke to Bolivian President Evo Morales to join forces in this fight. Ruano said they are looking into the causes of the fires, if campesinos burned land or if security protocols weren't followed. Close to 41,000 hectares of forests were affected in the Paraguayan Chaco.
Thank you, Osvaldo. And as well, from Bahía Negra, Osvaldo has been able to see how the government is reacting, and fires have restarted also in Paraguay in areas where the blazes were previously controlled. The fires have been mostly affecting the tres gigantes, the three giant forest reserve, and this is the story. He's been watching and what he's been able to see, and he shared with us in the following story.
Dry winds from the north, on top of an ongoing drought, have restarted wildfires in the Tres Gigantes Forest Reserve. On top of this, the wetland region is increasingly being threatened.
We are seeing small hotspots appearing throughout Paraguay's wetlands, and conditions are primed for the spread of fires. Humidity is low. There's a lot of dry vegetation and high winds.
Paraguay shares a border with both Bolivia and Brazil, as well as the largest tropical wetland region in the world. In this area, close to 21,000 hectares of forest have already been consumed.
This particular region is called the Palmar Savanna. This ecosystem is usually full of life, but now it's been suffering from a drought, which is being made worse due to the fires.
The Guira Paraguay Association, which is in charge of the Tres Gigantes Forest Reserve, continues to monitor the damage caused to the region.
We are doing daily monitoring of areas that are in high danger of fires. The drought season extends through July, August, and September.
Meanwhile, the National Emergency Ministry set up an operation center where authorities are organizing all efforts to put out the growing hotspots.
Incredible what these wildfires are doing to this magnificent reserve that is the Amazonia region. Like this, we go to a first break. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter and our correspondents there, Brian Mir, Nacho Lemus, and Osvaldo Sayas, on our Twitter, also at Telesur English, on my account at Laura P. Telesur. You can follow there all the information regarding these wildfires and, of course, about Tropical Storm Dorian in the Caribbean. Stay with us. We'll be back. We are back with more news, and we begin in the Caribbean as Trinidad and Tobago prepares to celebrate Independence Day on Saturday, 31st. Members of the public are warned that drones will not be allowed in the capital city. The Ministry of National Security says Port of Spain is designated no-fly zone with respect to the operation of unmanned aircraft system. The ministry says advisory is in keeping with the Civilian Aviation Act and Civil Aviation Authority Regulation 19 unmanned aircraft system, as well as the authorities prohibited and restricted areas. August 31st is Trinidad and Tobago's 57th independence anniversary after breaking free from Britain rule in 1962. And another social leader have been killed in Colombia. Danilo Olaya Perdomo was his name, and he was president of the Vereda Alto Cachaya Community Action Board in the municipality of Gigante. The community is asking that the case be investigated. He was shot and killed on Thursday night as he arrived to his rural home. Since the start of 2016, when the peace deal was signed in Havana, over 700 social leaders have been murdered in Colombia so far. And in order to have details about these killings, our correspondent in Bogotá, José Manuel Jiménez, has the details for us.
The genocide and murder of social and indigenous leaders, as well as human rights defenders in Colombia, isn't stopping. The latest person to be killed is 70-year-old Danilo Olaya Perdomo. He was president of the Vereda Alto Cachaya Community Action Board in the department of Huila, specifically in the town of Gigante. People in the region have said that this is the second leader killed over the last month. They point to the death of Humberto Trujillo, who was also murdered. He was the president of the Guadalupe Community Action Board, also in the town of Gigante. People are demanding an investigation, and that not only those who pulled the trigger are brought to justice, but also those who organised the murder, those who are behind the killing of social leaders in this part of the country. Social organisations and movements are demanding that the national government act to end the murders of social leaders in this region and all across the country. We have to bear in mind that Colombia is preparing for elections, and the latest report by the Electoral Observer Mission suggests extensive political violence, citing 73 social leaders killed between October 27, 2018 and July 27, 2019. This is a situation that isn't slowing down, and is at explosion point because elections are coming. Many of the victims of this armed conflict are opting for responsibility as a result of the national government's failure to meet its commitments to the peace deal. That deal agreed to create a state-regional policy for peace, truth and justice, as well as reparations for the victims of political violence.
Thank you, José Manuel. And from Colombia, we move on to Honduras, where 32 environmental activists have been sued by the Inversion Pinares mining company. The activists say this is a state-backed persecution for opposing the construction of a mine that would destroy their land. About this case, we have more details for you in the following story.
After mining company Inversiones Pinares, who stands accused of damaging private property, sued environmental activists, the activists went to the courts to condemn the charges against them and to warn of attempts on their lives.
Justice in this country is manipulated by the government, by transnational companies, and by organized crime. We don't want to be hunted like animals, because the mining company is using their hitmen to execute us.
Lawyers for the activists assure that members of the Huapinol community haven't committed any crime, and that's why they went to court. But once there, they were ignored, as authorities simply gave them numerous baseless excuses.
The public ministry has sued 32 people from Huanipol for opposing a mining project that contaminates the rivers, which is the only source of water they have. They are being sued for defending the river, life and the environment. The persecutor has claimed that these people are felons.
Over 10 years ago, the indigenous and Garifunas communities are being criminalized for opposing the expropriation of their lands, which are then given to hydroelectric and mining projects, without any sort of dialogues or consultation with inhabitants.
Which are the territories and resources they are handing over? They belong to the indigenous people, to our communities, because they are our lands and we have lived in peace with nature. They say that we are against development because we oppose the destruction of forests, because we oppose mining.
While the activists tried to make themselves heard, the Special Rapporteur of the United Nations, Diego Sayan, pointed out mistakes found in the implementation of the criminal justice system during his visit to Honduras.
When you talk about judges' independence, we're not talking about the right of judges to resolve cases according to the law and their own judgment, but of the right of the people, of the population, of having a justice system that provides solutions according to the law when they are involved in a case.
The accused activists will now have to wait for a judge to hear their case, but not before being arrested despite their apparent innocence.
And from Honduras, and from Latin America, of course, we move now to Africa information. So in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have announced the members of a new coalition government. The announcement comes after 7 months of negotiations following President Felix Tshisekedi's victory over Joseph Kabila in the general elections earlier this year. Most members of the new executive have been drawn from the former president's Common Front for Congo party. The Democratic Republic of the Congo will now have a woman vice prime minister, minister for foreign affairs, and minister for planning. January's election resulted in the first peaceful transition of power since the nation gained independence from Belgium in 1960.
The government is finally here. The President of the Republic, the head of state, has finally signed the order. Now that the government has been formed, we will get to work shortly.
And thousands of people have fled Cameroon's Anglophone regions, fearing a new wave of violent clashes between separatist forces and government troops. More than 40 people were killed over the weekend during clashes between the two groups, and the recent violence comes a few days after 10 separatist leaders were sentenced to life imprisonment by a military tribunal. The separatists who are fighting for an independent state accuse the Francophone majority government of discriminating against Anglophone regions.
We have just heard that there will be a lockdown, and since the children need to go to school, that's why we are moving down, so that the children can go to school.
What is causing me to go out is about the lockdown that is coming up, and we know that the town will not be too good, so I'm going to Bafustam to maybe stay there for a while before coming back.
And women in Sudan have demanded a 50% say in all decision-making processes during the country's transitional period. The women say they want a just participation in all government institutions on all levels of power. They also demand that the constitutional declaration by the Sovereign Council should grant women a minimum of 50% seats in all government institutions, as opposed to the proposed 40%. The women carried banners reading, "We are half of the population and we deserve half, and we are also technocrats."
Our struggle continues in order to achieve equality, justice, and freedom for women. And therefore, the No to Women's Suppression Initiative reinforces its demand for the participation of women in all positions of decision-making within the Alliance for Freedom and Change, and all the transnational period organizations considering it as a basic right.
And like this, we go to a second and very short break. You stay with us. We are back with more world news. Alternative G7 protesters have condemned the world leaders meeting in the French city of Biarritz for hypocrisy as the G7 summit comes to an end. The protesters highlighted a lack of action to combat inequality, pointing to a future free trade deal between the United States and the United Kingdom that could have dramatic consequences for Britain's socialized health sector. They also said that while they promised action, the world leaders provoked the fires in the Amazon rainforest through neoliberal policies and support for mining and other extraction industries contributing to deforestation in the region.
The French President Emmanuel Macron dared to say the following phrase during the G7 summit: "We have to answer the call of the ocean and the forests that are burning. We are Amazonian." Is this leader a true pyromaniac of the planet, who claims to want to stop the fires that they themselves provoke? The massive extraction of fossil fuels, deforestation, agro-industry, pollution of all natural aspects, multinational companies are mainly responsible for this ecological disaster, and the G7 pyromaniacs support them.
And following Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif's surprise visit to the G7 summit in France, he has traveled to China to hold talks about countering unilateralism and contempt for international law. This is regarding the sanctions towards Iran and also the nuclear deal signed with the United States that the G7 summit, that's been topic at the G7 summit, and trying to complete these negotiations. We have more details on the following report from our correspondent in Washington, Alina Duarte. Welcome, Alina.
Following his surprise visit to the G7 summit in Biarritz, France, the Iranian foreign minister arrived in Beijing to hold talks with the Chinese counterpart. Zarif said Iran and China need to join forces to counter unilateralism and contempt for international law, though Zarif didn't mention the United States directly during his meeting with Wang Yi, but he seemed to be referring to the Trump administration. Zarif highlighted that unilateralism is on the rise and that rejection of the international law, not just lack of respect for international law, but in fact contempt for international law, is on the rise and we need to work together. He also said he planned to tell Wang Yi about the latest developments as well as his tour of Europe and his discussion in Biarritz with his French colleagues over the nuclear agreement. On the sidelines of the G7 summit, the Iranian foreign minister also met with German, British and French diplomats. In his opening remarks to the meeting, Wang said that facing this situation, China, as a responsible country, agrees to work with Iran and other countries together for multilateralism, the basic rules of international politics, and uphold the rightful interests of each country.
Something went wrong with the video, but doesn't matter. Also in the United States, 19 states and the District of Columbia have filed a lawsuit over the Trump administration effort to change the now long immigrant children can be detained. Last week, the Department of Homeland Security said it wants to alter the so-called FtS settlement, which says immigrant children shouldn't be detained for more than 20 days. Now, the Trump administration wants to remove court oversight and put families in detention for longer than 20 days. But a judge first must approve the administration's proposal in order to end the agreement, which is unlikely because U.S. District Court Judge Dolly Gee ruled in 2015 to extend the FtS agreement to include children who come with families.
This administration is not above the law. They cannot rewrite the rules to detain children for a prolonged period of time and infringe on the rights of states in the process. We are ready to fight for the most vulnerable among us, and we will do it whatever it takes to protect all of our communities.
And like this, we come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and much more other information on our website, as you are seeing it, at telesurenglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and follow a special coverages we are making of the tropical storm Dorian in the Caribbean, and of course the wildfires hitting the Amazonian region in Brazil, Paraguay, and Bolivia. You can follow us there, and you can visit and read more about it. So you stay with us with Telesur, always together, connecting our global thoughts. Until next time, thank you for watching and keep paying attention to our next news brief. See you.